I've kept a rep on 2 weeks longer than I should have. I'd already told him, if this doesn't improve within the next 7 to 11 days, I'm letting you go. That deadline passed and absolutely nothing changed. And I kept him on anyway because I thought that things were going to turn around. Those 2 extra weeks cost my client an extra $10,000 to $20,000 in revenue. Calls came in, prospects ready to buy, and he was closing at 15 to 20% when the role needed 30 to 35%. Now that was over a year ago and I haven't made that mistake since. And in this video, I'm gonna walk you through the 3 signs that tell me it's time to let a closer go, and the 2 methods I use to either fix it or let it go cleanly. If you're managing a sales rep right now or building out a team, stay till the end. The last thing that I say is probably the most important. Firstly, before I ever look at close rate or revenue, I look at one thing first, which is, are they doing the basics? And I mean like genuinely the basic stuff. So showing up to team meetings on time, doing their end of day reports, sending pre-call messages to the prospects before call, and following up the same day and continuously after that call ends. None of that is honestly complicated, right? That's just the minimum standard of a sales rep doing their job. And here's why this matters more than most people think, right? When a closer starts slipping on these admin tasks, the basics, that is almost the first warning sign, right? Before the close rate drops, before the revenue dips, the basics, they go first, because those tasks exist, of course, for a reason. The pre-call sequence exists because a prospect who's received 2 or 3 different touch points 24 to 48 hours before a call is a completely different prospect to the one who booked 2 weeks ago and hasn't heard from you since. The follow-up exists because a lot of deals don't close on the first call. It's just natural, right? And the end of days exist so you actually have visibility on what your rep is doing with their specific time and the leads that get handed to them. When they stop doing those things, that downstream effect on numbers is almost guaranteed, right? And when you ask them why their numbers are down, they won't say it's because they stopped doing, the pre-call sequence a week ago. They'll give you a different reason entirely, right? Which brings me to sign number 2. They're externalizing everything. I had a closer myself personally on a client's team, and every single week when, performance came up, it was the same thing. And every single week when performance came up, it was the same thing, which is the leads are different. And that was his line, right? The leads are different, they're not bad, they're different. Like he'd found a way to make it sound almost reasonable. So I went back myself through the Fathom recordings, pulled the calls, right? Looked at the actual prospects coming through, and the leads weren't different at all. The quality was consistent. The problem was on the calls, not in the pipeline or the leads that he was receiving. But that's the thing about externalizing. It always sounds plausible on the surface. The leads are different. The setters are booking the wrong people. The offer isn't landing the way it used to. And sometimes those things are partially true, right? Lead quality does fluctuate. Setters do have off weeks. I'm not saying those things don't happen. A rep who externalizes as a default every week, every conversation, every time performance comes up is telling you something about themselves, right? They don't believe the outcome is in their hands, which it is. The second a salesperson stops believing that the outcome is in their hands, you have a problem that no script rewrite and no extra coaching session can fix. Because you can improve the leads, you can work on the offer, you can give them more support, and they will find a new reason because the problem was never the leads. The reps who compound over time, who actually become top performers, they do the opposite, right? When they have a bad week, they come to you before you go to them. They've already pulled their calls, they've already identified where they think they're losing people, and they're asking for specific help on specific problems. That's who you build a team around. Anyone consistently externalizing is telling you something, so listen to what they're telling you. Sign 3 is the obvious one, which is declining output that isn't getting any better. A lot of sales reps have dips or their close rate fluctuates, right? This is normal. There are bad weeks, and if you're firing people every time your numbers drop, you will burn through reps and never build a true sales team. What I'm looking for is a specific pattern, right? And the only way you can actually see this pattern clearly is if you have visibility on your numbers in the first place. And this is why every sales team I work with runs off a sales tracking dashboard, right? They're able to see their close rate, show rate, dollars, revenue, everything of that nature, all of it in one place. So you can see it from a bird's eye view, exactly what each rep is doing and where the numbers are moving. And if you don't have one set up already, there's a link in the description. Because if you're managing a closer and you don't have that visibility, you're finding out about declining output weeks after it started, right? And by the time it feels obvious, it's already been costing you money for quite some time. So if you're watching your dashboard and your metrics and the output is declining, you've had the conversation with the rep about it, you've worked on it together, their mindset, their skill set, their work ethic, and weeks later, nothing has moved. That combination is ultimately the signal. Not the dip by itself, but the dip plus the conversation, plus the support, plus the continued underperformance. At that point, you've done your job as a manager or a business owner, right? You've identified it, you've communicated it, and you've provided the relevant support, right? And it hasn't moved. That is not a coaching problem, that's a fit problem, right? I also want to say quickly, sometimes declining output that doesn't respond to coaching isn't even a fit problem, right? Sometimes it's a foundational problem, which is, in my scenario, I've hired a rep who once lied in their interview about how much revenue they've closed, right? And that came out a couple weeks in when we were doing like extra one-on-ones, trying to bring performance up. They were so heavily underperforming that they eventually came to me themselves and just admitted it. And that taught me, ultimately, your hiring process is your first line of defense here. Ultimately, that's a separate video. Once you're seeing these signs consistently, you've got two ways to ultimately handle it, right? And if you're building a sales team right now, you want me to look at your specific situation, what's working, what's leaking, where the problem actually is. Link is in the description, take a look. Anyways, method one, the performance improvement plan. Now, I use a PIP when a rep has done something that crosses a clear professional line, not just like underperformance, meaning they've actually done something like seriously wrong. For me, that's them like no-showing calls. I had a rep who no-showed 2 booked calls. His reason was he lost his Wi-Fi. And look, things happened, but he didn't message anyone, he didn't let anybody know, and didn't reach out to the prospect, just didn't show up and just said nothing. That is not a performance issue, that is a professionalism issue, and it needs to be handled formally. A PIP covers a few specific things, which is first, exactly what happened, specific dates, specific incidents, the impact that it had. So basically what happened, when, and what it cost. Then current performance against what the role actually requires, side by side, right? Close rate right now versus close rate required, daily output versus what was agreed upon. You're essentially making it impossible to argue with because the numbers are right there, right in front of them. Then the improvement targets, which have to be specific ones. Close rate needs to reach X% within this specific time frame. Follow-up completion needs to be 100%. Whatever the gaps are, you put exact numbers basically against them. Now, here's where I differ from the standard advice, which is most people say a PIP should be, 30, 60, 90 days. I don't do that. I do it anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks, right? Because if someone is not showing real improvement within, a week or two of being on a formal plan with clear consequences written down, they are not going to show it in 90 days at all, right? You're just delaying the inevitable and bleeding revenue while you try and fix this person. Document what support you're providing during that period, right? Whether that be you're doing call reviews, daily check-ins, whatever it is, and this protects you, right? It shows that this is a genuine attempt to fix things and not just, you're gone. And be explicit about the consequence, right? If these targets are not met by this specific date, your employment will be reviewed in writing. Both of you sign it. There's no ambiguity, right? They know exactly what's expected and exactly what happens if it doesn't happen. Method 2 is the direct conversation with a deadline. Now, this is what I use pretty much most of the time when it's not a specific incident, but a rep who is just underperforming across the board. I sit down with them and I tell them directly, here are the specific things that are lacking, right? I go through each one and specifically what is not happening and what it needs to look like. Whether that be follow-up isn't done, pre-call sequence hasn't been skipped, end of days haven't been completed. Then I tell them what we're going to do about it, which is we're going to work on this every day and I'm going to be in it with you trying to fix this. And then I tell them, if we don't see real improvement, I'm going to have to let you go. And I mean it, right? That's the most crucial part, right? And this is exactly where I went wrong with a rep I told you about at the start, which is I set that deadline, 7 to 11 days. He didn't hit it and I kept him on because I convinced myself he was going to turn around, which he never did. That deadline has to exist for a reason, right? And when it passes and the improvement isn't there, you already have your answer. And I just didn't want to accept it myself in my scenario, right? And I haven't made that mistake since. So these are the 3 signs: the basic slipping, externalizing everything, and declining output that does not respond to support. When you see those things, have the conversations early, set a real deadline, actually mean it when you say it. And when the deadline passes and nothing has changed, make that call. Because every week you leave the wrong person in the seat is wasted revenue every single week. Now, the question I always get after this conversation is, how do I avoid being here in the first place? How do I hire the right rep from the start? Now, me, myself personally, I hire closers in under 25 minutes. And I haven't posted a single job listing to do that. How I actually find and hire reps, that's in a separate video. And last but not least, this is what we do at Salesify full stack, where we do the recruiting, onboarding, training of sales reps, manage them. We do the ops, the copy, the funnels, the sales tracking, absolutely everything correlated to a great sales process. So if that's something that you're struggling with, or it can be a lot better than it is right now, click the link in the description and I will talk to you soon.